On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina.
Okay, so I do want to get into your job with the Diamondbacks. I have a ton of questions for you, so sorry if I'm just bombarding you. I'll probably start with the easiest one. Are you a one-man team or do you have support? And then we'll follow up with what are your responsibilities and we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah, I am the only dietitian in the org. However, I don't consider myself a one-man team because I rely super heavily on the rest of the sports med team, right? Like I think you've had plenty of Diamondbacks members on this podcast and it goes way, way back. And I'm sure, listening to a few, we all kind of talk about the same thing, but it's a collective unit. So yeah, I'm the only dietitian, but like I'm relying on our strength coaches. They're executing at the minor league level, like our food service plans and things like that. And even here, we're bouncing ideas, and I'm literally in the strength and conditioning office right now attached to the gym. Like this is where I sit. So yeah, technically one man team for a dietitian speak, but I think collectively as a sports medicine team, we're 30, 40 strong, and everyone's willing to help and certainly picks up where I leave off. And we have interns as well. We have a nice affiliation with local schools, and we're always creating opportunities for internships for people as well, and really looking to expand the nutrition department. So we can get more help as well, but that really starts with our intern program.
For sure. And then in terms of like in season, are you mostly with the major league team? Are you traveling to affiliates? Like what does that kind of look like for you?
Yeah, it's I would say 90 to 95% of my attention is with the major leagues. I travel with them. And I will take a couple, depending on the city that we go and the food service layout, and you know all about this. It's like each city is very different, each ballpark's very different, and the execution of food service there just kind of depends. So I have to strategically schedule my schedule around where we're going to be, and then I will take those opportunities to jet out to an affiliate and make sure and check in, right? Like I have set goals of at least visiting our AAA team a few times and checking in and making sure, hey, things are running smoothly. If guys are there, checking in and making sure that things are going well, and that works all the way down to our low A and even our DR really academy, of making sure that things are going well. It's just all in. Okay, I basically organize my schedule in like a year basis, and that 6 to 8 months that the major league team is on and rolling, I'm pretty locked in there because I have to be. And also as things come up, our sports medicine team knows they can call me. I can jet out for a day. It's not going to be the end of the world, or and go visit them if we need to, or things like that. So I will say that's how I organize my time, and try to be as effective as I can with it.
So do you have how much nutrition falls on the strength coaches at the affiliates? Like when I was in the minor leagues, we were ordering pre-games and post-games. We were taking care of budget. We were basically doing reports that would go up to the nutrition coordinator. Anything that kind of came up suddenly, we were on the phone with them. Is that kind of how you guys set it up, or are you ordering meals for all the affiliates and the strength coaches are just kind of playing quarterback at that point?
No, we have it very similar to what you're describing of your experience, and that's probably in my view. I mean, this is why we set it up this way. It's the most effective because you really need someone boots on the ground to understand. Okay, and every team's different, right? Every year is different, and guys are up and down so much, especially like AAA, AA, and to really understand what is needed there, you have to have boots on the ground. And I think similarly, like we have to have someone, myself, with the major league team to make sure everything's going well there. So I rely heavily on and lean on my teammates in the strength and conditioning department, and they're doing the budgets and documenting that, and we're always collaborating. I mean, I talk to them multiple times throughout the season of like, hey, what's going well, what can we change? You know, we're changing our food service models and things like that to offer more of a like a big league approach to it. Like guys show up and there's a meal, and it's not just pre-game meal, post-game meal. It's like, okay, you show up to the field, encouraging them to eat and things like that. So they're doing a lot of the heavy lifting, and I'm the supporting role to whatever we can to improve those at the minor league level.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think there's probably a ton of teams with a very similar model. Like I said, that was kind of how we operated when I was in the minor leagues way back when. And then, I mean, you've kind of talked about it a couple of times, but just how do you view like the interaction and the collaboration with other departments, and maybe not just the strength and conditioning department, but on the medical side, if a guy's doing rehab, or are you having interaction with like the coaching staff as a whole, the manager, the front office? Like, you're obviously, I mean, I know you said you're not a one-man team. So how does this take you, the one person in, the dietetics role, and kind of expand out into those other groups so that you can maximize your impact as a whole in the clubhouse?
Yeah, a great question. I think for me, your first part of that is how do I work with other members of the sports medicine team, and that's always communicating, right? Like that's going back to it when I said boots on the ground for food service. I think it's equally important for being entrenched in the day-to-day activity of at least a major league club. It's like, hey, making sure guys are doing what they need to do every single day to stay healthy or available, or popping over, having the freedom to go pop over to the athletic training room, right? What I love about this organization is that there's windows everywhere. So like if I step out here and I'm just in this office, and I step out in the gym and I look at the training room, like there's just windows there, and it's almost encouraging to go and go check in on with the ATs, or go to the team docs when they're here and check in and communicate with them. And there's no silos, there's no isolation or being on an island anywhere. And I think that's from my experience of looking at other programs and other departments in different areas of the professional sports, even collegiate sports. It's like that isn't always the case. So I will say, like, that's how we approach collaborating and really being available. I would say I fall under the umbrella of the sports medicine team. So anytime that they're involved with things, and of course, like nutrition is as important as I wanted to make nutrition, it's not involved with everything, right? Like a dude that might not be available because of a flu, right? Like there's not much I can do there. Like, yeah, we can give you some zinc, and if you can hold it down, and maybe that might help. But so I will say, like, I'm still under the umbrella, so I'm not walking into Tori's office and giving him a debrief or anything like that. But I'll filter that through our head athletic trainer Ryan DePanfilo, who's awesome, and our head strength coach Nate Shaw, who's also equally awesome, and be included as necessary.
And then in terms of your role individually, is your biggest impact felt with making sure food is coordinated as a whole versus like specific meal plans for players versus maybe like supplement routines for players? Like, where do you feel that you're making the most impact in the clubhouse as an individual versus like as a part of that group?
Yeah. I think the most impactful thing that I do is establishing a routine. I think of allowing guys and empowering guys to establish a routine that's going to serve them throughout the season too, right? Like it's the food, it's the coordinating, making sure the food's there on time, but like food service is only a piece of what dietitians do. It's truly like, for me, and this is my opinion on this, is I think like analyzing the blood work, working with the team docs, and like in spring training, making sure, hey, what are the small wins that we can get out of some of these guys? Like where are some of these biomarkers coming in and falling short of, hey, this guy maybe not be recovering his utmost, right? And you mentioned it earlier in this podcast. It's like, hey, the gift and the curse of a baseball season is it's 162 games, right? Like it's long. So yeah, we got some room to work with, and we can change the trajectory of how you're going to feel come playoff push or like September, right? Where hopefully you're in the mix and you're establish yourself and working to play in October. So I think that's certainly one of the most impactful things I think I do is just collaborating and changing trajectories and working with guys one-on-one too of, hey, when you go into the food room, yeah, it's there, and I'm the reason why it's there. And we have a amazing kitchen staff as well. Like, we work with them, and they're also the reason why it's there. It's like, now how do we make the best decisions possible with October in mind, right? So I think that's one of the more impactful things that I do. And it's a hard question to answer because there's so many different things, and our season is kind of, the way I bucket it is like there's spring training, and like that comes with impactful things, right? And that's getting guys kind of prepped. And then there's the actual season, and that comes with its own things. And then there's the off season, which again, you're shaking your head. It's like, yes, it has its own other things too. So you kind of have to bucket it that way. But I would say, like, in general, if I had to have one common denominator across the board, it'd be working with guys like that.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, and maybe that was a little bit biased of like asking what your impact is. Like, obviously that's probably in season. Like in the off season, how much are they making you still work? How much are you still doing? And like, what are you doing to really kind of make an impact with those guys? Obviously, you're not there with them the same way you are in season. So it may not be as easy for you, or it may be even easier. I don't know. But just what are you doing to kind of stay impactful in the off season? And then just, how much are you still working in the off season?
Yeah. The gift and the curse of being in Arizona is so many guys live out here, right? This is a unique opportunity here, but to kind of boil it all down is I'm ready to serve whenever they are ready, right? Like, if a guy has a home somewhere else and just wants to be somewhere else, and isn't on site and isn't asking a lot of questions, yeah, I'll check in every once in a while. Like, I think that's a responsibility to see, hey, how you doing? You need anything? Like, things like that. It depends on your relationship with guys, but that's how I approach it in the off season. Is I'm ready to serve. Is I will give you as much as you want out of me, right? Like, if you want to come in here, and we have a couple guys like this that want a meal plan. Hey, I'm looking to gain weight. How do I do this? What's something that I can do? And they'll sit down with me, and they'll we'll go over that. And then there's other guys that I don't hear from until I'll probably hear from them in 3 weeks or 4 weeks when we get to spring training, and that'll be the first time I've seen them, and that's okay. And like, everyone's a grown individual and can make that decision. So I'm not here to press anything or make them adhere to any specific plan. That being said, obviously we want to keep guys relatively in check, and you want to let them know that you care about them, and what expectations are, and who knows what you'll find in spring training. But yeah, I'm ready. My philosophy is just, I'm ready to serve in the off season as much as possible. Granted, it's a lot less than in season. It's like a Monday through Friday. You can text me on the weekends, no problem, but don't expect me to be at the facility on a Saturday like I would be at in the clubhouse on a Saturday day game or whatever it is, right?
Totally fair. Yeah, that's the unique thing in baseball. I don't know if it's the same in other sports. I can't speak on other sports. I've been in the game of baseball pretty much my whole professional career. Is you have this big range of guys who seem to not care at all, and they still succeed, and guys that care like it is the only thing in their life, and they succeed. And there's this huge range, and it's like, sometimes people want to try to take the guys that, maybe I shouldn't say they don't care, they don't put as much into it, right? They don't need you or want you to call them or text them. It's like, how do we get them to become this guy who wants a meal plan and has strict goals and is locked in? And it's like, some of those guys are never going to get there. And then it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, is just finding ways to make things stick, finding ways to be impactful. Like you may not take that guy on the furthest left of that bandwidth and make him all the way to the guy on the furthest right, but you might be able to shift him a little bit to the right. And even if there's one thing like, hey, this off season, all I want you to do is increase your protein intake. And I'm just going to check in once in a while. If you need me to send you some extra protein, I will. And the guy comes and he's, 5 pounds heavier, 10 pounds heavier, looks more muscular or whatever. And he's like, dude, I took your recommendation. I added more protein this offseason. Like, great. You know what I mean? Sometimes that's a win with guys, where there's other guys, like you said, that they may call you 3 times a week. Like, hey, is it good if I eat Chick-fil-A, or what should I eat tonight for dinner? And like, I've seen both sides. And to be honest, they're all successful. They're all big leaguers. And I don't know, maybe the guy on the right actually is overthinking things instead of just living a little, and maybe he could learn something from the guy on the left, and conversely, I don't know. But that is a very real challenge in baseball, is just there are so many different personalities and levels of like attention to detail and things like that, guys are, if you're in the big leagues, you're successful in my mind. It's incredibly difficult to get there. And sometimes you just have to let guys be themselves. Sometimes you do have to make legitimate interventions with them. And being able to just be impactful in any way, I think that's probably the right way to look at it for yourself, with some boundaries, right? Like, I think that's good too, to hey, on the weekends, like, it's November 27th, like, maybe don't call me on a Saturday night, maybe wait till Monday. But, kind of going along with the theme of challenges, like, what is the most difficult or most challenging aspect of your job?
I would say the schedule. I mean, it's baseball. You get into it. You have to commit to know. You have to know what you're committing to when you get into professional baseball, and that's what I would encourage anyone listening that has, an idea of, hey, I want to make it to the big leagues, or I want to be a dietitian at the professional level. It's like, yeah, that's an awesome goal, and just know that you're taking on something that's going to demand a lot out of you, right? And you have to I don't know if the sacrifice is the right word, but you have to rearrange your priorities and really build a life around that. So I think that's probably the most challenging thing, I think, as just a human being, is so many different cities, so many different players, so many different meals, right? Like, I don't know if people realize how many meals baseball players get when they show up to the stadium. It's 3 a day, just so people know. And it's just that wears on you, and you have good days, you have bad days, and the schedule definitely can be challenging, and it's also awesome at the same time too, right? Like, you get to go see so many different things. But I would say that's probably, in my experience so far, it's been the schedule and balancing so many different things.
Yeah, 3 meals a day, 162 games. And then even in the 18 days that you don't play, there's usually at least one meal that's provided, because you're almost never not going to the ballpark. But I couldn't agree with you more. I actually was just on the phone last night with one of my buddy's GAs, and he's thinking about getting into baseball. And I pretty much laid everything out for him. And he was like, honestly, it sounds awesome. I was like, all right, well, if you think that stuff sounds awesome, you're crazy enough to do it and stick around. So it demands a lot of you. And I think, like you said, rearranging your priorities is a very real thing. And I think a lot of people go in with these like really big, like, oh yeah, professional sports, professional baseball, I'm going to be a big leaguer. And it kind of punches everybody in the mouth. And some people leave with a bad taste, and they're like, nah, I'm good. And some people are like, yeah, punch me again. I don't know. I don't care. Like, and it doesn't seem like there's a middle ground. Like, you either really love it and you get it and you stick around, or it's not for you. And like I said, I've moved on to a new role, and a lot of the people that I'm around, I try to explain the schedule to them, and they're like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Like, that's just what I wanted to do. And it's very hard. And like you said, there are very good days, there are very bad days. And if you can keep things in perspective for yourself, I think it helps a lot. But that was just the life we chose. And, I'm thankful that I have a good support system at home with my wife, and my family's very supportive. And all the travel, I mean, there's times we went on the West Coast, I didn't talk to her for 10 days because, when she went to work, I was still sleeping. And when I got up and went to work, she was at work. And then when she got home from work, I was still there for the game. And by the time the game was over, she was already in bed. So it takes a lot, not just from you, but from the others that are around you. And so just for me, like probably just expanding on your point, is having other people that help keep you in line and help keep you in check and kind of know what your goals are and are supportive of it and understand the realistic expectations of what baseball is going to demand from you, I think really helps. It's very hard to do it alone. In fact, I don't know anybody that's been in baseball that doesn't have some sort of like rock solid support at home. And the other thing for me, which I'm shocked, and maybe you're just being really, really nice and correct, but when I was in the minor leagues doing food, I was like, the two jobs I never want in baseball are dietitian and clubhouse manager. And then when I got to the big leagues and I met our travel sec, I was like, okay, that one, I don't want that one either. Because no matter what you do, never is there a day where everyone is happy. And it's literally like, we could win the game 10-0. You could have the best steak, lobster tail dinner, but a guy went 0 for 4 and he's tired of steak. And, and he's going to let you know. And a lot of times for us, like I said, we were doing the food directly. It came right to the strength coach. And I was like, man, I'm just kind of the messenger here. Like, I can't even imagine if I was actually, the dietitian and having to deal with some of these guys and their food demands. And I think the further up you go in the big leagues, the resources are a little better. Guys kind of expect a little bit more. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I'm gluten-free. And it's like, when did that happen? Last week. Like, okay, now we have to make a whole nother plan. And then like 2 weeks later, he's like, nah, I'm getting rid of that. And you're like, I just put a whole plan for you. So maybe you've had that experience. Maybe you haven't had that experience. Maybe you're just being really nice. But I know, at least from even my side, it was very challenging. And my dad is in food service, so I always have a respect for people who have to interact with food and have like big batches of food and kind of coordinate things for people. That I'm just very happy to have 3 meals at the ballpark a day, where sometimes guys are not. And I don't think it's the food. I think it's the pressure of playing and not performing, that they have to take it out on somebody sometimes. And that's probably another relevant thing, is just to have some thick skin when you get into baseball. It's very rarely like a personal thing. It's much more just they need somebody to vent to, and you just happen to be there, or they trust you, or you're just around the most. And as long as you can handle that, I think it's okay. But yes, I don't envy your role at all, to be honest.
Yeah.
Big leagues or not, don't envy it.
Yeah, you hit on so many good things, and I think it just reminds me too, is like this happens countless times throughout the season. Is you set up a spread or whatever, you work with the chef to bring in a bunch of different things, and you have a guy come up to you and he's like, that was the best meal ever, that was awesome, like, can we have that again? And then you're feeling good about yourself. 30 minutes later, a guy comes up, it's like, hey, like, why didn't we have this, why didn't we have that, like, what was up with this? And it's like, it just shows you. And I think this is an important point for any dietitian listening. I know you got a lot of strength coaches listening here, but anyone that's doing the food, I guess, is you can't make everyone happy. Obviously, like that's very understated. I relate it to baseball as like, hey, if you're batting 400, right? You're 40% of the time you're getting a hit. Like that's elite. You're going to the Hall of Fame. Like I think food's kind of like that too. Obviously, you want to make a lot of people happy and you want to listen to people. And I think as long as people know that, one, you care, and two, that you value their feedback, you can listen to their feedback and make adjustments, things like that to an extent. And then you can dish it back to them too, right? If they're being needy, or that's like, what are you asking about? You're gluten-free this week, you're not gluten-free the next week. Like that's a perfect example of, I will probably rip on you a little bit and be like, what's the deal with this gluten allergy? Like, is that real? And to having that rapport with guys too, right? Because I think at least in this clubhouse, in baseball in general, it's like, if you try to appease everyone all the time, you're going to miss on everyone. But if you can kind of like stand your ground and just do your best and show them that you care, I think you're going to be in a good space with guys, and they're going to be, and when you do mess up, because inevitably, things go awry, they're going to be way more forgiving, and you might hear about it, but that's okay, right? Like, it's okay.
Yeah, you definitely have to own up to the mistakes. And I think that goes a long way. Just be like, yeah, I messed up. I'll fix it. And yeah, I was kind of the same when I was in the minor leagues and I was doing the food. It was like 10% of the guys, no matter what I give them, they're going to be appreciative. They're going to be happy. They're going to eat the food. They're not going to say a word. 10% of the guys were always going to be upset about the food because they just needed an outlet to vent. It was that middle 80% that I think, like you said, if you could win at least 40% of that group over, you're on the winning side of things. And sometimes it's a home run and you get 70%, 80%. Sometimes you swing and miss and it's like 10 to 20%. And again, some of those days are like, a lot of the times I felt like my day almost centered around good or bad based on how the food went for the group. And like, if the clubhouse was clean, which I had nothing to do with, but if the clubby did a really good job, the clubhouse manager did a really good job of keeping it clean, doing the laundry right, like getting the shoes clean, and the food was good, most of the time guys were happy, and that would make me happy. And then one of the other points you mentioned is guys are going to complain. It's inevitable. Taking feedback and actually making changes goes a long way. I think it's hard because you have to sift through, like, some guys are just complaining to complain. And for me, when guys would come to me, they'd be like, I don't want this food. I don't want X. I don't want steak. Okay. What do you want instead of steak? I don't want you to tell me what you don't want. I want you to tell me what you do want or what you'd prefer to see. And a lot of times they'd be like, I don't know, just not steak. And I'm like, well, that's not, like, I can't work with that. That's not tangible. I can't take that and make a change. And they're like, well, what if we try chicken and salmon? I'm like, I can do that. I can make a change. And I think taking the feedback is one thing, taking it and making changes when you can, and actually having the guys see that you put a little extra effort in and make the change. I think that's where guys start buying in and supporting you. And then, like you said, when you mess up, they're a little more forgiving. And when they throw jabs at you, they're a little bit more friendly than they are like a little bit more serious.
Right. 100%. Yep. Yeah. Gauging that feedback, making adjustments is also important to fostering those relationships, right? So they can give you feedback, and then they can tell you, really, like, the worst thing that anything can happen is, like, everyone in that clubhouse hates it and no one's telling me, right? Because then, like, how I can't change, I can't adjust, I can't do any of that. But you have to really create those relationships and those avenues, and build those systems that you can get a feel like you kind of have an idea of, okay, these guys like this, this group like this, and then you can start to bucket them of, like, okay, you got your complainers, probably never going to make them happy, but we're going to try. And then you got your rocks, right? And then you got your guys on the other side of the spectrum. So 100% agree. Gauge that feedback, make adjustments. And that's true across the board, right? You always got to be, in professional baseball, you got to be ready to adjust and thinking on your feet, and always kind of like tweaking things. And every year is different too. You're going to get a different clubhouse every year, just about.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, man. And I think that's really, really valuable for, again, whether it's dietitians or strength coaches or ATs or anybody listening, like, that is all really relevant. What do you believe makes a dietitian and or performance staff member successful?
I think it starts with authenticity, right? Like, you show up to work, ready to work, right? You're going to work hard. You're going to be in professional sports or performance space in general. Coming into it with no ego, right? Like, those are, and ready to learn, right? And look for the 1% gains all around you, with a goal of showing up every day. And just, we talked about this throughout the podcast. It's like, ready to make an impact, ready to make a positive impact. If you have that mindset, then you really can't lose, right? Like, you show up and you're yourself. You're not trying to be anyone else. and you're ready to work and you don't have an ego and you're ready to learn and you just want to make an impact, like, to me, that's a rock star, right? And you can teach someone the X's and O's of nutrition, right? Like, hey, these are kind of what's going on over here. And but the real measure of success in my mind is your commitment to personal growth and ready to day after day after day, ready to show up and really get after it and get better, right? Like, okay, getting that feedback. We just talked about feedback with the players. It's like we do a ton of feedback with our sports med staff. It's like if you show up and you go through your first year, but then you get a ton of great feedback and you start to implement that and you ditch the ego and you realize that, hey, your teammates are just trying to make you better by giving you that feedback. Boom, you apply it your second year. Like, that's a rock star. That's a successful performance staff member in my mind, and especially a dietitian in general.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with you. And I think as long as you have the intentions of doing that the reality is, like, we've talked about this as well, right? Like, the schedule is so demanding. There's so many days, and some days you miss and you're not at your best, or, internally, maybe you don't feel that you're at your best, but giving 100% of whatever you have that day. Maybe you only have 80% of you, but like giving 100% of that 80, and being prepared to just try to help people. And I think the beauty of the Major League clubhouse is there's basically one goal, and that's to win and to try to win the World Series. And hopefully everybody is kind of pulling the rope in the same direction. So whether you talk to the manager, the AT, the starting second baseman, the eighth inning guy, like, everybody that day is preparing to try to win the game that night. And as long as you're there with that intention, I think it's a win, and it's a measure of success. And I've said this before on the podcast, but I have had times where I had a player do something, and a year later I was a year wiser, and I realized that probably wasn't the best thing for that player. And I've gone to the player and I've told them, like, listen, last year I failed you at this. At the time, this was the most knowledge I had. This was the best of the best I had, but I was wrong. And this is how I'm making the adjustment for you. And I think, like you said, that comes with being authentic and not having an ego, and just, like I said, pulling the rope in the same direction and trying to win. And that's when things are fun in the big leagues. And again, you don't always hit the nail on the head, but you at least try to. And I think if you try to do that every day, you can go to bed at night in a good place and have no regrets for the day. At least that's how I tried to do it when I was in the big leagues as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I think you hit on so many good things. And if you can go get into bed at the end of the night and say, I gave 110% effort, this is how I align. Like, because I used to measure success from exterior things, right? Like, as you grow up and all those things, it's like, oh, I got to get to this stage. I got to get to that stage. When I get that job, I'll be successful. Or when I get whatever, right? That position or whatever it is. And now it's like, okay, if you can, when you crawl into bed, in the night, your head hits the pillow, did I give 110%? Yes. Boom. Successful day. And if you stack days like that over the course of a career, everything you're talking about, Chris, is like, yeah, that's a successful career, and you can't go wrong, right? So, love it.
Kind of along those lines, any advice for others in the field, either younger folks trying to get into baseball, or just folks that have been around a while that are listening that want to stay on top of things?
I would say work on personal skills, right? Like being aware of yourself, how to be authentic, right? Like all those things. I think you could take, if you have two candidates that come in for an interview, what really separates these two candidates in my mind is like, how are they showing up every single day, right? Are they being authentic? Do they have an ego? Do they feel like they have all the answers? Or are they going to come in here with a growth mindset and be willing to learn and make us better and challenge us and be willing to get challenged? So that's my advice to anyone looking to get into this field, or anyone that's been in the field looking for a pivot, is what separates you a lot of times is not really the knowledge. The knowledge comes, right? Like you got to get experience to even get the knowledge, but it's really your awareness, your personal skills of how you relate to people is what is the huge difference maker, right? Like you can have the best, all the knowledge and nutrition knowledge in the world, but if you can't relate to guys, if you can't relate to other people in general, like that's going to go out the window. Like it doesn't matter. So that's my advice for others in the field who are looking to break in is continue to. I think it gets overlooked a lot of times, and it's not as emphasized as having the knowledge. It's a little bit less sexy, right? Like you want to have the nutrition knowledge, so when you get a nutrition question, you can boom. I'm sure you're similar to strength and conditioning. Oh, what's the right movement here? And okay, boom, I got it for you. It's really, that stuff comes with time, but it's really about who are you, how you show up to with others, how do you communicate, and how do you relate to people?
Yeah, for sure. Like being around some younger coaches now, I've told our intern groups, like when you come in, you're almost going to feel inadequate, and your initial reaction is to try to throw like every bit of textbook knowledge that you know at somebody. When the reality is most people know how to do a squat, they may just need a cue or two. And honestly, your best bet early on is to just get to know the clientele and the athletes and just show them like you're a good person, you're here for them, not that you're the smartest person ever coaching a squat and throwing 10,000 cues at them. And then they're like, yep, I know how to squat, man. Like, can we just get going? So that comes with experience, I think. I genuinely believe that I was probably the same way when I was early on in this career in this field. I didn't know what I was doing. I still don't know what I'm doing, but now I say it in less words, I guess. But yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. How about continuing education resources, either books you'd recommend, seminars you attend, podcasts you listen to? Where are you going to stay sharp, and what would you recommend for others to stay sharp?
Yeah, I'm a big book guy. I like audiobooks. So I'm not huge into podcasts, but books I think are impactful or have been impactful for myself, or the Ryan Holiday books I think are awesome. I'm sure a lot of people have mentioned those. Um, Outlive by Peter Attia is a good, great, like holistic approach to health and longevity. I think it opens up the door to a lot of these concepts that we talk about, more less performance based, more longevity, but it certainly is a good introduction to all the complexities of how do we live longer, how do we stay healthy, things like that. I think Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey is one of my favorite books. I actually read it again for the second time. It's a good lesson. We talked a lot about being authentic. It's a great lesson on authenticity, and it's okay to be uncertain, right? We talked about uncertainty being one of those things, and just listen to him and his story. I think it is just impactful. It's been impactful for myself, and lastly, I would say Unreasonable Hospitality is a great book. It's really about the power of over delivering. And I know in my field, nutrition, I'm sure it's similar to you guys. It's like, if you can over deliver, like you're going to hook a guy for life. Like if you can, it's that power of over delivering and going the extra mile is boom, you just solidified some trust with a guy. And that book is a great lesson. It's more of the hospitality business. But I would encourage anyone that's maybe not in that field, but to extract some of the lessons of power of over delivering in general. Long-winded answer to this, but seminars to attend. I think the ASPDA workshops, that's our the Sports Dietitian Association, but they have a bunch of sports nutrition boot camps and advanced practice workshops and things like that for if you want to go, Zoom route or in person. That's a great website to look up. It's just ASPDA, and then the website will come up from there. And then the last thing I'll say is, because I don't listen to a lot of podcasts, I don't follow a lot of podcasts, I do these monthly emails, and one in particular, it's from this dietitian, Allie Gallup. She's actually with the Mariners. She's just got a job there. It's called the Learning Lineup, and I would recommend it to anyone. It's basically a monthly email blast of 3 to 4 scientific studies that come out. Sometimes it's sniper on a specific topic. So if you're into literature and want to see the most up-to-date things, great resource. It literally comes out to you. So you just have to check your inbox. And then in that learning lineup, there's 2 to 4 podcast recommendations as well. So I'm always listening to things that she's recommending, just from random things, because I haven't tuned in or subscribed to any podcast in general, because I think a lot of them are kind of, well, some of them have good topics and other things I'm just less interested in. But that's a great way, I think, to sign up for something and get something delivered to your inbox and be like, oh, all right, I'm gonna check out these 4 podcasts this month and learn some new stuff. And it's a great way to keep yourself sharp. And I know in my business, obviously the literature coming out, you got to stay sharp on that, because much like yourself, it's like every year we're learning new things, and what was right last year might not be right this year. So you gotta stay sharp. So anyone looking for continuing education stuff, I think those are some great resources.
Yeah, all of those, a large majority of those have not been recommended. So, and I'll definitely have to check out Allie's stuff. She's really solid. I had her on. We had like a dietitian roundtable, and she was one of them on. So, really smart person. Okay, so we have been at it for a while. It's been great to get to know you, to talk some shop. How do you feel about a lightning round? And then I promise I'll get you out of here.
I love it, man. It's been great talking to you.
Cool. All right, we'll do 4 questions. Long or short of answers that you'd like. First question: who is your biggest influence in the field of performance nutrition?
I would say I got to give a shout out to my Buckeyes. Sarah Wick over there has been in the game since 2004, I think, for many years. Didn't mean to put her on blast like that, but yeah, she's awesome. She's been super influential for myself, and really coached me, been a mentor to me. And has been awesome. So she's someone that I know I can turn to if I have questions or advice, and someone that has decades of experience being a sports dietitian, is truly an OG to the field in general.
What is currently the biggest misconception in the nutrition world?
That eating healthy has to suck. It doesn't have to suck. It can be great.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
Biggest accomplishment. So I'll say personally, and this is the most recent one, is I actually got to speak at winter meetings. I gave a couple of presentations there, and I felt really accomplished after that, and networking and really having that conversation open up to a lot of different people of what we talked about, and yeah, it was great. So
last one: any career other than being a dietitian, what would you choose?
I would say if talent was not the limiting factor here, I would say a professional skier, a freestyle skier. I mean, I grew up skiing. I love skiing, and it's something that I really enjoy. So if I could do it all and I could choose anything, I think that'd be a pretty awesome lifestyle.
Makes sense. New Hampshire definitely makes sense. So, Joe, it's been great to get to know you, to talk some shop. If the listeners want to get in touch, where is the best place to go? Is it social media, or is there somewhere else we can contact you?
I would say I'm not super active on Instagram. You can find me on Instagram, but really LinkedIn, I think, is probably the best way. Joseph M. Scire is me. Just look for the Diamondbacks on the profile page, and that's me. That's my most active social media right now. So that's probably the best place.
Awesome. Like I said, man, it's been really nice to get to know you. Best of luck this year. Hopefully you get at least 1 or 2 more Saturdays off before things get going here, and we'll talk soon.
Awesome, Chris. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, everybody, that's going to conclude part 2 of this 2-part episode with Joe. I hope you were able to enjoy both parts of this interview. If you missed part 1, we went over betting on yourself and serving the next generation, connecting the dots with elite athletes, and of course, how to make a great smoothie. And then in this one, we got a deep dive into what Joe's role looks like with the Diamondbacks, both in season and out of season, making impacts and really feeling, like a part of something bigger than yourself in an organization in professional sports, and just finding ways to be successful in a role in the performance world, whether that's in nutrition, in strength and conditioning, or really any other role. I think a lot of the advice that he gave in this episode really kind of reigns true no matter what part of the field that you're in. 3 things that I took from Joe in this part of the episode: finding ways to help athletes create positive routines for themselves can be incredibly impactful long term. Sometimes you have to rearrange your priorities to achieve your goals. and approaching each day with a positive attitude and a commitment to serving others can help you to have a long and meaningful career in the performance world. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.